The Armenian origins of Proto-Indo-Europeans. But before we get too deep into the video, first I want to tell you guys about my social media platforms. So I have a Clubhouse account and we can actually talk to one another on it. I also host Clubhouse rooms every now and then where I might talk about history and genetics of the Middle East and Africa. I have a Twitter page, a Facebook account, and a Facebook page, as well as a Instagram, all titled The Hebrew of Israel. And what I typically do on these platforms is post upcoming videos as well as slides for my presentations. And so just be on the lookout for all of that on my social media platforms. And if you want to support me financially for the channel, you can look at my Patreon as well as my PayPal and my GoFundMe. And with all of that out of the way, let's begin with the video. Armenia is another believed location for the homeland and origins of Proto-Indo-Europeans. Let's look into the Armenian hypothesis. The Armenian hypothesis of the Proto-Indo-European homeland proposed by Georgian Tamez V. Gamgerzdiz and Russian linguist Vyacheslav Ivanov in the early 1980s suggests that Proto-Indo-European was spoken during the 5th through 4th millennium BC in the eastern Anatolia and southern Caucasus and northern Mesopotamia. Recent DNA research has led to renewed suggestions of a Caucasian homeland for a pre-Proto-Indo-European. It also lends support to the Indo-Hittite hypothesis, according to which both Proto-Anatolian and Proto-Indo-European split off from a common mother language no later than the 4th millennium BC. Gamgerzdiz and Ivanov presented their hypothesis in Russian in 1980 through 1981 in two articles in Vestnik Dresdnian Istrony. During the following years, they expanded and developed their work into the voluminous book published in Russian in 1984. The English translation of the book appeared in 1995. In English, a short sketch of the hypothesis first appeared in the Early History of Indo-European Languages, published in Scientific America in 1990. Tamas Ramkerdez published an update to the hypothesis in 2010. According to Gamgerzdiz and Ivanov, the Indo-European languages derive from a language originally spoken in the wide area of Armenian highlands, the southern Caucasus, and northern Mesopotamia. The Anatolian languages, including Hittite, split off before 4000 BCE and migrated into Anatolia at around 2000 BCE. Around 4000 BCE, the Proto-Indo-European community split into Greek, Armenian, Indo-Aryans, Celto-Italo-Torchnians, and Balto-Slavo-Germanics at around 3000 through 2500 BCE. Greek moved to the west while the Indo-Aryans, the Celto-Italo-Trechnians, and the Balto-Slavo-Germanics moved east and then northwards along the eastern slope of the Caspian Sea. The Torchnians split into the Italo-Celtics before 2000 BCE and moved further east, while the Italo-Celtics and the Balto-Slavo-Germanics turned west again towards the northern slope of the Black Sea. From there, they expanded further into Europe between between around 2000 and 1000 BCE. So there is renewed interest when it comes to this hypothesis based on DNA, actually. Recent DNA research, 2015 through 2018, has led to renewed suggestions of a Caucasian homeland for a Proto-Indo-European. It also has been proposed by some to lend support to an Indo-Hittite hypothesis, according to which both Proto-Anatolian and Proto-Indo-European split off from a common mother language no later than the 4th millennium BCE. Heck, at 2015 states that the Armenian Plateau hypothesis gains in plausibility since the Yamnaya partly descend from a Near Eastern population, which resembles present day Armenians. Yet, they also state that the question of what languages were spoken by the Eastern European hunter gatherers and the southern Armenian like ancestral population remains open. David Reich, in his 2018 publication, Who Are We and Who We Got and How We Got Here, noting the presence of some Indo European languages, such as Hittite, in parts of ancient Anatolia, states that the most likely location of the population that first spoke an Indo European language was south of the Caucasus Mountains, perhaps in present day Iran or Armenia, because ancient DNA from people who lived there matches what we would expect for a source population, both for the Yamnaya and the ancient Anatolians. Wang at 2018 note that the Caucasus served as a corridor for gene flow between the steppe and cultures south of the Caucasus during the Neolithic and the Bronze Age, stating that this opens up the plausibility of a homeland of Proto-Indo-European south of the Caucasus. Christine Christesny, in an interview with Der Spiegel in May 2018, stated that the Yamnaya culture may have had a predecessor at the Caucasus where Proto-Indo-European was spoken. I believe that Armenia being the origins of Proto-Indo-Europeans to be extremely plausible, especially when you look at it from a genetic perspective. Now, understand this: an Armenian origin of Proto-Indo-European wouldn't disprove the Yamnaya or the Anatolian origins of Proto-Indo-European, because basically, ancestral Proto-Indo-European would have originated in Armenia or south of the Caucasus and then spread to the Pontic Steppe and to become the Yamnaya culture. Also, another ancestral Proto-Indo-European branch would spread to Anatolia from Armenia. Basically, from Armenia, the two locations that Proto-Indo-Europeans would have settled would have been Anatolia and the Pontic Steppe. Those, they basically, as a visualization, when Proto-Indo-Europeans came out of Armenia or the Southern Caucasus, the two places that they would have went to is the Pontic Steppe and Anatolia, which is again why I'm saying that this doesn't disprove the Yamnaya or the Anatolian hypothesis. Really, they still fit. This is PPIE, Proto-Indo-European, or pre-Proto-Indo-European, and then over here they could become Proto-Indo-Europeans, and same right here, they can become Proto-Indo-Europeans and then spread deeper into Europe. Here's another visualization that might help you out. Here's the Armenian Plateau. They're going into Yamnaya, and then others going into Anatolia. Then they'll go deeper into Europe from basically both directions. So, again, I feel like Armenia is the best plausible explanation for all this. And here's just a map showing Proto-Indo-European language being spread. As you can see, again, going to the Yamnaya and then going into Anatolia, becoming Hittite, one of the oldest Indo-European languages, and then spreading throughout the continent of Europe, and even going into into the east Central Asia, and India. So this is from Wolfgang Heck in his 2015 study. Massive migration from the steppe is a source for Indo-European languages in Europe. And it says the Armenian plateau hypothesis gains in plausibility since the Yamnaya partly descend from a Near Eastern population which resembles present-day Armenians. Yet Heck and his team also state that the question of what languages were spoken by the Eastern European hunter gatherers and the South Armenian like ancestral population remains open. This is from David Reich in his 2018 publication, Who We Are and How We Got Here. The most likely location of the population that first spoke an Indo-European language was south of the Caucasus Mountains, perhaps in present-day Iran or Armenia, because ancient DNA from people who lived there matches what we would expect for a source population, both for the Yamnaya and for ancient Anatolians. And this is from Chera Cho Wang in his 2018 study, The Genetic Prehistory of the Greater Caucasus. And it says, the insight that the Caucasus Mountains served not only as a corridor for the spread of Caucasus hunter-gatherer / Neolithic Iranian ancestry, but also for later gene flow from the south also has a bearing on the postulated homelands of Proto-Indo-European languages and documented gene flows that could have carried a consecutive spread of both across West Eurasia, perceiving the Caucasus as an occasional bridge rather than a strict border during the Neolithic and Bronze Age opens up the possibility of a homeland of Proto-Indo-European south of the Caucasus, which itself provides a parsimonious explanation for an early branching of the Anatolian languages. And this is from Peter de Barros Damgaard in his 2018 study, The First Horse Herders and the Impact of Early Bronze Age Steppe. And it says, they further note that this lends support to the Indo-Hittite hypothesis, according to which both Proto-Anatolian and Proto-Indo-European split off from a common mother language no later than the 4th millennium BCE. So this is from Dr. David Reich, a professor, by the way, in the Department of Genetics at the Harvard Medical School. And so it says, from 7,000 until 5,000 years ago, we observe a steady influx into the steppe of a population whose ancestors trace their origin to the south as it bore genetic affinity to ancient and present-day people of Armenia and Iran, eventually crystallizing in the Yamnaya or the Yamnaya, who were about a 1-to-1 ratio of ancestry from these two sources. A good guess is that the migration proceeded via the Caucasus isthmus between the Black and Caspian Seas. Ancient DNA available from this time in Anatolia shows no evidence of steppe ancestry similar to that in the Yamnaya. This suggests to me that the most likely location of the population that first spoke an Indo-European language was south of the Caucasus Mountains, perhaps in present-day Iran or Armenia, because ancient DNA from people who lived there matches what we would expect for a source population, both for the Yamnaya and for ancient Anatolians. Basically, what they're saying is, the DNA, the steppe DNA isn't in Anatolians, but we do find this Caucasus DNA both in the Anatolians and also in the Yamnaya. So it's likely that this Caucasus or Caucasian Iranian / Armenian like DNA would have been the source of the origin of Proto-Indo-Europeans, because we find in both Anatolia and the Yamnaya, but we don't find steppe in Anatolia. Yet the ancient Anatolians were Indo-European people. In this scenario, if this scenario is right, the population sent one branch up into the steppe mixing with steppe hunter-gatherers in a 1-to-1 ratio to become the Yamnaya as described earlier, and the other to Anatolia to found the ancestors of people there who spoke languages such as Hittite. So yeah, he explains it right there. And our analysis shows, and by the way, this is from Lizard's 2016 study, Genomic Insight into the Origin of Farming in the Ancient Near East. And it says, our analysis showed that the ancient population of the Chalcolithic Iran, Chalcolithic Armenia, Bronze Age Armenia, and Chalcolithic Anatolia were all composed of the same ancestral components. And so this is from genetic evidence for an origin of the Armenians from Bronze Age mixing of multiple populations. And it says the position of the Armenians within global genetic diversity appears to mirror the geographical location of Turkey, which forms a bridge connecting Europe, the Near East, and the Caucasus. It is believed to have been the origin and uh, or route for migrating Near Eastern farmers towards Europe during the Neolithic, and has probably also played a major role in the dispersal of the Indo-European languages. So, from a linguistic, geographical, and genetic perspective, I believe Armenia to be the best location for Proto-Indo-Europeans. Again, an Armenian origin of Proto-Indo-European wouldn't disprove the Yamnaya or the Anatolian origin of Proto-Indo-Europeans. Basically, ancestral Proto-Indo-European would have originated in Armenia and then spread to the Pontic steppe to become the Yamnaya culture, and the other ancestral Proto-Indo-Europeans in Armenia would have spread to Anatolia. Basically, from Armenia, the two locations that Proto-Indo-Europeans would have settled was Anatolia and the Pontic steppe. And so here's just a visualization of that. And it's basically what David Reich said, that, you know, both peoples, the Yamnaya and the Anatolians, have this Caucasian like DNA, but the Anatolians don't have this specific Eastern European hunter gatherer DNA. So, but with both of these locations, these peoples having Caucasus DNA, and this being the place where you see a lot of old ancient Indo European, it's likely that this is the homeland that they would have went to. So, here's another visualization of that. Anatolian speakers, which would be your Hittites, one of the oldest Indo-European language, and the Yamnaya, who will be the Indo-Europeans that we know of today, who they will descend from. And here's just another visualization of that. Anatolian languages and Hittite languages spreading from, the Caucasus, southern Caucasus, specifically in Armenia, and then some going north into, the modern day Ukraine to spread the various Indo-European languages we know of today that still exist. So, also, another reason why I subscribe to the Armenian origin of Proto-Indo-Europeans is because, from a biblical perspective, whether it's old Earth or young Earth, having Proto-Indo-Europeans close to the Tower of Babel is kind of important, from definitely a young Earth perspective. And we know that the Tower of Babel was, according to the narrative, when the Most High created the languages from Shem, Ham, and Japheth's descendants who were, at the tower. And of course, the Indo-European languages would belong to one of Noah's sons. So that language family has to belong to one of Noah's sons, therefore placing the origins of Indo-European in Armenia. This is actually a great fit biblically. Genesis chapter 11, verse 1 through 9. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole world, or whole earth. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the sons of men had built. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language, and that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the tower, the city. Therefore, its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. And the Tower of Babel was likely in the Middle East, somewhere near Iraq. And the descendants of the peoples who spoke Proto-Indo-European, they just would have went north, essentially, to Armenia or to the southern Caucasus, spreading the Indo-European languages after the Tower of Babel. This, of course, will be from a more young Earth perspective, like a 6,000 year, 10,000 year, 12,000 year Earth range. And so, basically, kind of fits that biblical story if you were to go with that route. But with that being said, if Armenia is the homeland and origins of Proto-Indo-European, then the Y-DNA haplogroup J would definitely be part of the lineage of Proto-Indo-Europeans, because haplogroup J was present in Armenia and the Caucasus at that time. This is again from the origins and diffusion of human Y chromosome haplogroup J1-M267, and it says, the J1B-F4306 and J1A2-PH77 branches split off at the very beginning. These are rare lineages distributed mostly among ancient and modern populations of the Caucasus, the Armenian highland, Iran, and Pakistan. Interestingly, the 13,000-year-old hunter-gatherer from the South Caucasus belongs to J1B-F4306. The J1A1B-Z18375 branch has a geographic distribution subsequently overlapping with that of the J1B-F4306 and J1A2-PH77 branches. The J1A1B-Z18375 branch is found overwhelmingly among ancient and modern populations of the Caucasus, the Armenian highland, Iran, and Anatolia. This branch constitutes the aforementioned peak of the haplogroup J1-M267 branch in the Northeast Caucasus. Haplogroup J1-M267 were found among populations living in the Caucasus and neighboring regions. Our Bayesian continuous phylogeographic analysis suggests the origin of the haplogroup J1-M267 in Western Asia, confirming previous assumptions. Most of the deeply diverged lineages belong to the population of the northern latitudes in the region, in line with the finding of the late Pleistocene hunter-gatherer from the South Caucasus. Our analysis provide better statistical confidence for the origin of haplogroup J1-M267 in the area encompassing the Caucasus, the Armenian highland, and the Zagros Mountains. With that being said, haplogroup J would have been part of the spread of Indo-Europeans going into the Pontic Steppe, Anatolia, and Iran. As we see, haplogroup J present heavily among this region where we see, Proto-Indo-Europeans. And they would have spread, specifically J markers would have spread with these Proto-Indo-Europeans, going into the Yamnaya and Anatolia, and also into Iran, spreading basically in the center of the Middle East. And we know that when it comes to the Indo-European languages, they do perfectly fit with haplogroup J, especially haplogroup J2. This is, by the way, from EUpedia, titled haplogroup J. Most J1 Europeans belong to J1-Z18228 branch, which is also found in Anatolia and the Caucasus, but not in Arabic countries. The Z1842 subclade of Z1828 is the most common variety of J1 in Armenia and Georgia. And this is from How Eurasia Was Born. While early Indo-Europeans who originally crossed from Anatolia in the Bronze Age, who were most likely represented by various J2 subclades, genetic data suggests that as soon as they reached Central Europe, they assimilated they assimilated large masses of the native population, and from then on, the rest of their expansion were characterized by more recently formed subclades of the haplogroups characteristic to the native populations. So I believe Armenia was the homeland of Proto-Indo-Europeans. This fits genetically, linguistically, geographically, and biblically. Furthermore, Haplogroup J would be one of the many Proto-Indo-European lineages, and Haplogroup J would have dispersed from the Caucasus across Eurasia. So this is where we end the Armenian origins of Proto-Indo-Europeans. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell, and leave a comment for any questions you might have. And don't forget to follow any of the social media accounts that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And with all of that out of the way, have a great day and shalom.